The bakery bell jingled softly as two little girls pushed open the glass door, their small frames nearly swallowed by oversized sweaters. Their golden curls tumbled down their shoulders, yet their faces wore an expression far too heavy for their age. They moved hesitantly toward the counter, clutching a handful of coins that clinked nervously in their trembling fingers. Behind them, customers carried on with chatter and laughter, the warm aroma of fresh bread filling the room like comfort itself. But for the twins, comfort felt like a distant dream. They spread the coins on the wooden counter with great care, each penny shining with the weight of sacrifice. The cashier glanced at the pile, her brows knitting together as she realized the amount fell short. "I'm sorry, girls," she said gently, "this isn't enough." The smaller twins' lips quivered as she whispered, Could we pay the rest later? We just need the bread for tonight." The bakery grew still for a moment, as though time itself paused at the sound of those desperate words. In the corner of the room, a man looked up from his coffee. His name was Daniel, a single father who knew too well the sting of empty pockets and the heavy silence of hungry nights. His chest tightened as he watched the twins' wide eyes plead silently for mercy, their voices cracking under the weight of innocence. At that moment, Daniel faced a choice, one that seemed small to the world, but would forever alter the course of 4 lives. Daniel rose slowly from his chair, his footsteps steady but his heart racing. Memories of his own daughter, Lily, flashed before his eyes, nights when he had skipped dinner just to make sure she could eat, mornings when he had searched couch cushions for spare change to buy milk. He approached the counter, his tall frame casting a gentle shadow over the 2 trembling girls. "How much is the bread?" he asked softly, his voice carrying both calm and strength. The cashier replied with a number that seemed insignificant to most but felt like a mountain to the little ones. Without hesitation, Daniel reached into his wallet and handed over enough not just for 1 loaf, but for 2. The girls turned toward him, their wide, tear-filled eyes searching his face for understanding. "Why?" the older twin whispered, as though kindness itself was foreign to her. Daniel knelt so he could meet them at eye level, his voice breaking with sincerity. "Because no child should have to beg for food. And because once upon a time, someone helped me too." The bakery had grown quiet, customers watched the scene unfold, some blinking away tears. The cashier carefully bagged the bread, slipping in an extra roll without a word. Daniel handed the bag to the girls, but instead of running off with joy, they clutched it close and stood frozen, as though afraid the moment might vanish if they moved. For Daniel, it wasn't just about bread. It was about dignity. It was about children deserving more than coins scraped together in desperation. And as he stood there, an ache stirred deep within him, whispering that this encounter was only the beginning of something much greater than he imagined. The twins hesitated, then one of them finally spoke. "We don't have a dad," she murmured, her voice so soft it almost disappeared in the hum of the bakery. The words pierced Daniel's heart like a knife. He glanced down at them, 2 fragile souls trying to carry burdens far too heavy for their small shoulders. "Where's your mom?" he asked gently. The girls exchanged a quick look, as if deciding whether to reveal a secret. The older one finally answered, "She works, a lot. Sometimes all night. We just try not to bother her." Their innocence, their attempt to shield their mother from worry, made Daniel's throat tighten. He thought about Lily waiting at home, about how hard it had been to raise her alone after his wife passed away. He understood loneliness. He understood struggle. And now, standing before these girls, he felt an almost sacred pull toward them, as though fate had chosen this moment for their paths to cross. The younger twin tugged at his sleeve. "Thank you, mister," she whispered, her eyes glistening with gratitude. Daniel smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You just have to promise me one thing, never stop believing there are good people in this world." For the first time, the twins smiled, small, uncertain smiles, but real. Around them, customers quietly began slipping bills into the donation jar by the register, moved by the scene they had just witnessed. Strangers who minutes ago had been hurrying through their routines were now bound by an invisible thread of compassion. What began as a simple purchase of bread was already rippling outward, stirring kindness in everyone present. As Daniel walked the girls outside, the autumn air brushed against their cheeks, carrying the scent of falling leaves and wood smoke. He crouched beside them, balancing the bag of bread in his hand. "Do you live nearby?" he asked, and the older twin nodded, pointing toward a narrow street lined with worn-down apartments. Something inside Daniel stirred, a memory of nights when his daughter had fallen asleep in his arms while he worried about overdue rent and unpaid bills. He couldn't just let these girls walk away and return to that cycle of hunger and worry. "Tell you what," he said softly, "how about I walk you home? Just to make sure you get there safe." They hesitated, then slowly nodded, their trust fragile but growing. As they walked, Daniel listened to their chatter. Small details about their school, the way they liked to braid each other's hair, how they shared a single notebook for homework because they couldn't afford two. Every word deepened the ache in his chest. By the time they reached the cracked steps of their apartment building, Daniel already knew he couldn't simply say goodbye. He watched as the twins fumbled with a rusty key, pushing open a door that creaked louder than it should. Inside, the faint light revealed a tiny, cluttered space that spoke of exhaustion more than neglect. A woman emerged from the back room, her face weary, her uniform still dusted with flour from her shift at a factory. Her eyes widened in alarm at the sight of Daniel standing beside her daughters. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice both protective and tired. The twins rushed to her side. "Mama," they cried, "he bought us bread." The mother's hands trembled as she reached for the bag, her eyes filling with tears when she saw not just one loaf, but two. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, as if ashamed. "They shouldn't have bothered you. We've been struggling." Her voice cracked, heavy with years of silent sacrifice. Daniel shook his head gently. "They didn't bother me. In fact, they reminded me of something important, what it means to keep going, even when life feels impossible." He told her about Lily, about the nights he had doubted he could provide, and how kindness from strangers had kept him afloat when he felt he was sinking. For a moment, the room was still, except for the twins holding onto their mother's apron, their eyes darting between the two adults. Then Daniel did something unexpected. He pulled a small card from his wallet and placed it on the worn table. "I run a small construction business," he explained. "It's not much, but we're hiring part-time help, office work, flexible hours. If you're interested, it might give you more time with your girls." The mother's breath caught, her tired eyes suddenly alive with a glimmer of hope. She clutched the card as if it were a lifeline. "Why would you do this for us?" she whispered. Daniel glanced at the twins, who were now nibbling on slices of bread with joy that seemed to light the room. "Because once, someone believed in me when I had nothing," he said softly. "And sometimes, all it takes is one choice, one moment, to change everything." In that fragile apartment, a seed of possibility was planted, one that could grow into a new beginning. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to shift for the little family. The mother, Elena, took Daniel's offer and began working part-time at his office, where her diligence and quiet strength quickly made her indispensable. The twins no longer lingered at bakery counters with trembling hands, instead, they bounded into school with lunches packed and laughter bubbling from their lips. Daniel often stopped by after work, bringing Lily along, and the four children would play together as if they had always been siblings. For Daniel, what began as a simple act of buying bread had blossomed into something far greater, an extended family born not from blood, but from compassion. One chilly evening, as they all shared a meal at Daniel's modest home, Elena looked across the table, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "You saved us," she whispered, emotion thick in her voice. Daniel shook his head, smiling gently. "No. We saved each other. You reminded me that kindness multiplies when it's shared." The twins leaned against him, their tiny hands gripping his arms, no longer strangers but pieces of his heart. In that moment, The weight of past struggles seemed to dissolve, replaced by the warmth of a future built on trust, hope, and love. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Sometimes the smallest choices, a loaf of bread, a moment of listening, an outstretched hand, carry the power to change lives forever. And for Daniel, Elena, and their children, it was proof that humanity's greatest strength lies not in wealth or status, but in the courage to care when it matters most.